All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Gretchen Shaw. I'm the Vice President of Programs here at the Hotline. We are very excited about today's session. We have nearly 1,400 people who have registered. So those of you who are able to get a seat at the table are the lucky ones. We're also going to be live streaming this on Facebook. Juliana, actually, I forgot to mention, if you could watch via Facebook and just keep an eye on that. Hopefully those of you who are joining us there will also have a fabulous experience. So we're just going to sit back and let people enter. It may take us a minute or two, but then I'll move through a few housekeeping slides and we'll get the session started. So again, thank you. All right, for those who are just joining us, thank you for being here today. Again, my name is Gretchen Shaw, and I'm the Vice President of Programs here at the Hotline. We have had close to 1,400 people register for today's session, which is amazing. So we're going to give it just 1 minute to let some more people join, and then I will get started. It looks like we've got about 300 people so far. So thanks for being with us today. All right, as you're entering, if you wouldn't mind, just to enter, I see some of you are doing it already. Go ahead and let us know where you're from. We're very excited to have you with us today. And people are slowly moving in. So I'm going to go ahead and start the session. Again, thank you so much for being here. My name is Gretchen Shaw. I'm the Vice President of Programs here at the Hotline. And we are very excited about today's presentation, Conflict versus Conversation, a conversation with some wonderful National Youth Council members of the Hotline. All right, I'm going to move through a few slides, so just bear with us. I'm going to turn the session over now to our Spanish interpreters so that they can provide instruction to those who would be listening in Spanish. So Andrea or Annabelle, whichever one of you will be explaining that, feel free to proceed.
Gracias, Gretchen. Thank you so much. I will be providing these instructions both in English and Spanish, so just bear with me. Voy a proporcionar estas instrucciones en inglés y en español, así que por favor pongan atención para saber cómo escuchar en su idioma de preferencia, en este caso en español o en inglés. So for everyone who's joining and whose language of preference is English, we ask that you also choose a language channel just so that you're able to hear the interpreter's rendition in case anybody participates in Spanish. So at this moment, if you're joining through your computer, you should be able to see a globe icon at the bottom of the screen that says interpretation. Please go ahead and click here and then select English. Do not mute original audio so that you're able to hear everything that's happening in the main room. Again, this will enable you to hear the interpreter's rendition in case anybody participates in Spanish. If you haven't selected your language channel, then you will not hear this. Okay, so if you're joining through a smart device, such as your tablet or your smartphone, you can tap lightly on the screen to bring up the three-dot menu and again select language interpretation, then select English. Do not mute original audio and activate your selection by tapping on Done. If you're joining through a Chromebook computer or if you're dialing into the session, you will not have access to these settings. Okay, let me say the same thing in Spanish. Ok, buenas tardes a todos. Para poder escuchar en español, en este momento en su computadora puede ver la opción que dice Interpretación de idiomas. Es un icono de globo terráqueo que aparece en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Por favor, haga clic aquí para poder escuchar esta sesión en español a través del intérprete. Si está uniéndose a través de un dispositivo inteligente, como su teléfono o su tableta, puede tocar ligeramente la pantalla para ver el menú de 3 puntos que dice Más. Después seleccione Interpretación de idiomas. Después seleccione Español. Si solamente desea escuchar al intérprete, usted puede silenciar el audio original. Si no, lo escuchará en el trasfondo a un volumen reducido. Muy bien. Una vez que haga su selección, por favor, actívela al seleccionar el botón de listo o done. Ya debe de estar en un canal de interpretación. Si por alguna razón no nos puede escuchar, nos lo puede hacer saber en el chat. Una de nosotras le ayudará. Si se está uniendo a esta sesión a través de una computadora Chromebook o si está llamando por teléfono a la sesión, no tendrá acceso a esta configuración de interpretación de idiomas. Muy bien. Okay, now I'm gonna hand it back to Gretchen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Annabelle. All right, so I'll move on. Okay, again, welcome. For those who are just joining us, thank you for being here. A few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded. As you can see, it's being interpreted into ASL and Spanish. Please feel free to use the chat function. We encourage you to chat with others and share thoughts during the session. We have a tight schedule, so unfortunately, we will not have time for questions and answers. But if you are interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to us after the session. Also, all attendees and registrants will receive a copy of this recording via email within about 1 business week following today's session. So, all right, today's session is being led by our lovely Angela Lee. She's the director of Love is Respect. And today's Youth Council, Love is Respect Youth Council members who will be leading the discussion are Rayanne Cunningham from Seattle, Cassandra Marksky from Oakland, California, Julia Miller from Lafayette, Indiana, and Katja McClendon from Payson, Utah. So thank you all so much. Again, I will be here in the background. I'm going to stop my video and mute myself and turn the session over now to Angela. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gretchen. Welcome, everyone. We're really excited that you're present for this amazing conversation. You know, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and we call it Teen DVAM, right? 2024 is like the most exhilarating theme because our National Youth Council members chose the theme, Love Like That, hashtag Love Like That, you know, as an opportunity to uplift healthy relationships. But also Teen DVAM is a moment designed to amplify, yes, you, and I'm talking to the Youth Council members on this screen, their voices and experiences in relationships, because we want to uplift what's healthy, what is unhealthy, or even abusive. So this topic and this awareness is so important that in 2010, Congress declared Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month every February. So teens, young adults, their loved ones can all join together to spotlight the real harm, right? The real harm that our young people experience, whether that's online, on campus, or even at home. And you probably, I say this all the time, but it's a message that doesn't change. So, and Love is Respect, let's move on into it. We know that conflict, you know, it happens in relationships, all relationships. And by conflict, I mean specifically like verbal disagreements and arguments. People disagree sometimes, it happens. But it's so important that everyone understands that you have the right to have a different opinion from your partner or partners, right? There's nothing wrong with that. People disagree sometimes. You know, I think what's most important is utilizing one of the key elements that Love is Respect talks about over and over: healthy communication, effectively. What do we mean by effectively? In a healthy way, right? Arguments shouldn't become personal or attacks or efforts, to lower, someone's self-esteem or belittle them. If you can't express yourself, without fear of retaliation, you may be experiencing abuse, which is why we're having this conversation. So I want to start with Rayanne. Can you talk about, Rayon, I'm so sorry. Can you talk about what healthy conversations around like complex topics versus conflict mean to you?
Yeah, so for me personally, I think it starts with intention. I believe if you're going into our discussion with your partner that's filled with anger or more underlying issues that you're kind of suppressing, that's not going to lead to the best outcome. But I do think that tough conversations are needed. So starting off, being intentional about we're trying to solve this issue instead of, this is a problem, not you're the problem, I think is like the big difference.
I love that. Yeah, your intentions. What is the intention? What is the motive? Do we want to resolve that? How about you, Cassie?
I think it all really starts with like actually having the conversation. I think sometimes in like any type of relationships, often people will have this like internal feeling of anger or whatever it may be, but it really takes some guts to have that conversation rather than just fostering that inside yourself or expecting the other person to like read your mind.
Cannot read your mind. Okay. Lord, okay, y'all. So I got a little housekeeping. ASL interpreter, can you lower your camera? Some signs are too low for us to see. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Last but not least, well, not even last. Kat, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, I think a really big important part of understanding conflict, especially around complex situations, is to understand why, first off, you believe what you believe, and then why your partner believes what they believe. Because you can have conflict on the surface level, but as soon as you're able to get down and understand what values, what morals, what life experiences are being deciding factors in how a person reacts to a certain situation, that's where we can have an increase in empathy and sympathy and understanding to be able to dive into the root of issues instead of just arguing ideas.
Yeah. So both partners or partners, plural or singular, have a equal say in what's being discussed. Last but definitely not least, Julia, how do you feel about this question?
Yeah, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is a little bit of everything. I loved what everyone said. It definitely brings to mind just the idea of going to your partner with an open mind when you're having tough conversations, because you don't know where they're coming from emotionally. You don't know how they're feeling. You don't know how they felt in that moment when they got stressed out or freaked out or something. So going in with it with an open mind, and everyone going into it with the open mind. Your partner also has to have an open mind, because if both parties are closed-minded, you're gonna butt heads. But if both parties go in with like the questioning, okay, so why did you make that feel that way? Or why did that outburst happen? Like asking those questions of why, and in being intentional with the why questions too, as well, I think is important.
Yeah, I know it's important. I like that, because so what I'm hearing is intention, open-mindedness, like there's a reoccurring pattern, going in with empathy, right? And hearing, how to talk about what hurts you or your partner is very important. right? It's not one-sided. So a big part of navigating those conflicts, or we'll just say disagreements, healthy, involves perhaps knowing how to apologize or even holding yourself accountable. So as a follow-up question to that response, let me ask y'all, and I'm gonna start with you, Julia. Is conflict or disagreements always negative? Are there any benefits to having these type of, conversations in a relationship?
I think conflict is healthy. Sometimes it can be, because I mean, you're going to disagree on things. You and your partner, like, probably grew up, me and my partner grew up differently. So we have different views in the world. So, like, there's often times where, like, just our different worldviews butt heads. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why do you think that? Like, what are you talking about? And that's not necessarily bad conflict. It's just, I don't even like just a difference of opinion and trying to understand someone else's perspective. So I definitely think conflict is important because it again pushes you out of your comfort zone. And in order to grow as a person, sometimes you need to be put out of your comfort zone.
Julia said that. Sometimes you need to be put out of your comfort zone. And not only growing as a person, the relationship growing as a whole, huh? Yeah, I like that. Kat, what do you think?
Yeah, I honestly think that conflict is a lot of the times necessary to not only just solve problems, but to even understand where there are problems. Because especially like as Julie was saying, like each person grows up with such different experiences that one partner might be experiencing a negative aspect of the relationship that the other partner is just not even aware of because they've been raised differently and have a different experience within the relationship. And so by addressing these issues and bringing them to light and awareness, and conflict will almost inevitably come from that, to be like, wait, I'm trying to understand. If the conflict is coming from a place of trying to understand and trying to solve, then I think it's actually 100% a positive thing. It's when it becomes destructive and it ends up invalidating your partner's experiences, that's when it can be a very, very negative thing. Not can be, it is a negative thing. But, and so just having like that perspective of conflict is how we learn about problems and then solve our problems.
Okay, I love that. Rayon?
Yeah, I agree with what the other youth council members stated. I think that conflict, once it gets to the point of resolution, can help partners grow together, actually. I think it's a part of the experience, and I think that having the proper tools that you can use in order to gain clarity after that conflict is kind of what makes the biggest difference. But I don't think it's inherently negative at all.
Yeah. The proper tools. What are those proper tools? The key elements to a healthy relationship, maybe respect, trust, honesty, consent, boundaries, healthy communication, equality. Yeah. So who hasn't went? Cassie?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I agree with what everyone has said so far. I think that having like important conversations can really bring people closer. I know growing up, until honestly pretty recently, I was kind of a people pleaser where I would say whatever I thought would make someone not mad at me. But then I didn't really feel that close to people because I felt like I wasn't truly being myself. And then kind of when I learned how to have healthy conflict and that healthy conflict isn't a bad thing, it's just a way to better understand people. I feel like I've been able to be more of my true self with people, in all sorts of relationships in my life. And I've actually grown closer by being able to talk through things and see conflict not as necessarily a problem, but just a way of understanding people better.
Yeah. I too dealt with the people pleasing and the codependency. And sometimes it tries to raise this little ugly presence up in my life. But I think it's important, and you hit it on the literally your point that you stated about being your authentic self is what the goal is, right? We just know that people aren't perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. And sometimes when you hear the word conflict, because sometimes it's good to have a relationship with words, but that can kind of make you cringe. So maybe a disagreement, a misunderstanding, whatever works that makes you feel comfortable and safe to have the conversation. But there will be times when you're upset or angry with your partner or partners, or you may do something that upsets them. Because just like I say, disagreements happen. So in your own experience, and I want to start with you, Rayon, as a youth or young adult, what do you think causes conflict or during the conversation? What in your experience has made it, what's an example that made it heated?
I think that a lot of conflict during a conversation, even if partners are, saying things that make sense, would be ego. I think going into it with, kind of this higher ego or this, I'm doing everything right. I don't do anything wrong, so lack of self-awareness and lack of accountability. I've definitely been there, not perfect whatsoever. So I think putting that to the side and wanting to get to the point of like, we're helping our relationship grow, and instead of I'm attacking you, that definitely helps.
Wow, I was not expecting that answer. That's why the youth council members are so amazing. But yeah, ego, easing good out, right? There's two people or more in this relationship and everyone feelings matter. Love it. Yeah. Okay. You see me snap. All right, Cassie.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that another thing that maybe this is going a little bit more into the like abusive relationship side, but another thing that can really get in the way of healthy communication is not recognizing someone else's experience, even if it's not your experience.
Yeah.
So I feel like, for example, the like I think that someone, maybe you had a completely different experience, but you can't say that the other person doesn't understand themselves or their own experience. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. There's no room to question ourselves because your perspective always makes sense. And what I'm hearing is, some people, we don't know what they've experienced in their past relationships. We don't know what they've seen as far as peer pressure. Don't make me get on a rant about how movies, social media, music can romanticize unhealthy relationships, because that's just, so these things does happen. But being open-minded, it goes back to what y'all said on the first question, and really looking at that and asking those. I think a great tool would be utilizing open-ended questions. We talk about that on our website, or even inviting each other to go to the relationship quiz, the healthy relationship quiz on our website, and just, and hopefully from that, we'll follow up with a conversation. Next, Julia.
Yeah, for me, it definitely brought up like lack of communication and feelings. Like when someone just shuts down emotionally and just refuses to say how they're feeling, because the whole thing of communication and conflict resolution is like saying your feelings, how you're feeling, like what got you to this point of like boiling over, or what is caused this conflict that needs to be addressed. And when you shut down and clam up, then the conflict can't be addressed. So that's definitely something I thought about. On the unhealthy side, I guess I thought about power dynamics. I've definitely been in a relationship where someone is like more power, like has more power in their head than the other person. And that definitely causes conflict when one person doesn't feel on equal playing field as the other. And I think that's very important in a relationship, that both parties feel that they are being treated equally and that they are, on an equal playing field when it comes to conflict resolution. Because if you get to that point of conflict resolution and one person's like power over you, you're not going to be able to have that like voice, feeling of voice being heard. So yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that's a really good point too. And because like a relationship exists on a spectrum. Y'all have heard me say this over and over too. Starts off healthy, it's all, that honeymoon phase. Oh, I like you. Ooh, ooh. You know, doing a little TikTok or something, you know, going out to eat or whatever young people, I'm not old, whatever y'all do to have fun, right? And then as time goes on, and it's not, I'm not saying that the first time you have a disagreement or a conflict, oh, this is abusive, but it's about those warning signs and the pattern. Like if you've addressed it, and then something similar happens, or another warning sign happens, then it may be time to really have another conversation, or even end the relationship, if, depending on what the situation is. So that leads to my next question. How do you set up boundaries? How do you set up boundaries during a difficult conversation or a challenging conversation? I'm gonna start with you, Kat.
Yeah, so boundaries are always so tricky. But I think it's important to actually set up boundaries before conflict even arises. If you're in a healthy relationship where you're able to have good communication, set up kind of like a game plan and be like, hey, when, not if, when we get into this space where we might not be the nicest to each other, what's going to happen? What's our game plan? How are we going to preserve our healthy relationship? And the other thing to think about is that boundaries are very personal. A lot of people have the misconception that boundaries are for the other person, but no, boundaries are for yourself. I kind of think about it like an allergy. If you're allergic to something, it's your responsibility to protect yourself from it. And that's exactly what a boundary is it's your job to uphold it. And so then when you decide either with your partner or by yourself what your boundaries are, then it's your job to stick to them in the moment, because otherwise, what are they there for? And so having the strength to stick to them in those conflicting situations will just bring a lot of strength, and it will help preserve the healthiness of a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I have nothing else to say on that. Yeah, the audience is, the chat is going crazy. Yeah, they're like, yeah, I love that. I do want to let everyone know that Rayon had to leave. She had another engagement, but we really appreciate them sharing space with us for the time that they did. Next, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Who wants to go next? I mean, I can if you want me to, but
I can go.
go ahead,
Um,
Cassie.
So I think that everything Kat said is exactly what I was thinking, especially about kind of thinking about it beforehand. Like anyone you're in a long enough relationship with, you don't, it shouldn't kind of be like a in the moment thing. You can have that conversation. So I love that. Um, I think that in addition to that, kind of having boundaries with yourself almost, like what am I willing to compromise on, and what is a need that I have that maybe, you know, I'm looking for a relationship where the other person is, you know, willing to do this. I think that sometimes in unhealthy relationships, it can, people's needs can get, you know, like what do you call it, dismissed. And so I think that kind of being aware of what you want before going into a conversation, if that's possible, can be really helpful as well, because I know that doesn't always possible, but if you kind of set up a time to have the conversation, you can think like, what am I hoping to get out of this? And like, what are my needs personally?
Yeah. And it gives you time to respond versus react. Because sometimes in the heat of the moment, you know, you might need to take that 48-hour rule or think through it, you know, because you can be on the defense, but how can I really process what my partner is saying, or how can my partner process what I'm saying? But again, setting boundaries before and when that boundary is crossed. Because one of my boundaries is a certain word we are not going to use when we're angry, under no circumstances. And that's something that was designated and talked about early on in the relationship. Okay, Julia?
I would say, as someone who was figuring out boundaries, there were definitely times where I didn't know my boundaries and like got triggered. and just knowing when to leave. When you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling triggered, just knowing when to just walk away and leave. Because I think like sometimes, at least when I'm dealing with family specifically, it can be like too much and you just have to stop. And that's where boundaries come huge into play. And I learned boundaries way later on when it came to relationships. So I'm just now putting boundaries to play in my relationship and have not had any issues with boundaries being crossed or any conflicts when it comes to that, which I'm very thankful with. But yes, it's just learning those boundaries. And it can be hard sometimes to know them beforehand. So for people who don't, just knowing when to walk away. That's my advice. Just know when it's too much for you and just the door's open. You can leave. Like it's okay.
Yeah. 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 You have that right. You have that right. And I also want to point out, and a curious, I mean, y'all can just give me a nod. Just because boundaries was set in the beginning of the relationship, a boundary may change. You may add some more, correct? So know that you have that right to do that as well. Okay. Audience, I hope you're enjoying this conversation because youth council members are really helping us to understand how they deal with conflict and how they try to have more of a conversation than conflict. So, what are some things to avoid saying? And I just talked about it, like there's one word you just cannot use for me during a disagreement with your partner. What are some things to avoid? Like think about some of your personal experiences. What are some things you think that we should just avoid? And I'll start with Cassie.
I think that kind of the language you use even can have different meanings even when it has the same intention. So I think that like respecting the other person's feelings, even if maybe it like you think you wouldn't feel the same way or something like that. Like you can't I'd avoid saying something like that someone doesn't have a right to feel a certain way, because even if they don't have the right to even if they shouldn't behave a certain way, you can't really control other people's feelings. I think also like you can talk about you can talk about boundaries and just have that full conversation and just respecting what other people boundaries are. And maybe you have something that doesn't quite line up, but just respecting that it's really important to that person, even if maybe you end up talking about some form of compromise.
Yeah. I just love your responses. I hear your passion, I hear your heart, and I'm not going to tell your story, but because there's a purpose. Like for me, I grew up in an abusive childhood, right? So there are certain things that I heard, you're dumb, you're stupid, shut up, those things are still triggering to me, whether it's an intimate relationship, a friendship, work. You understand what I'm saying? So understanding that it's just not kind. We want to be kind. And if we see that we can't, because again, we are human beings, who said it? Just walk out the door. Just stop. Right? Let's circle back on this. Who's next? I know names.
I can go. I think a huge thing to just be aware of is, again, this has already been mentioned, but remembering it's us versus the problem, not us versus each other. And so the minute you start attacking your partner as a person, right, using some of those insults, right, attacking their intelligence, attacking their character, attacking their personality. First off, if you're attacking your partner's personality and you don't like the personality, why are you with them? And so it's like, by being able to recognize how, as soon as the conversation shifts from the problem to the person, you're done. draw the line, like don't engage anymore. And so I think if we're talking about things to avoid saying to a partner during a conflicting situation, personal attacks is the number one. Because how on earth are you supposed to have a healthy relationship if every time something hard happens, you and your partner are just tearing each other down? Like that's no. We're
Right.
here to build each other up.
Right? Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And I love when you said, like, if you don't like them, why are you in a relationship with them? Duh. Well, there's different challenges. There's peer pressure. That might be a webinar down the line, but All right, Julia, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely say the rule in our household with me and my partner is no raised voices unless we're asking for toilet paper in the bathroom or something like that. Like we don't yell at each other, we don't raise our voice unless like, you need something or like that. Because yelling for me is a huge trigger. So we don't yell at each other when we have conflict. We sit down face to face and like just talk it out. Like, what are we feeling? How are we doing? I also hate being told to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. Hate that. Hate that. That sort of thing. Like, don't tell me to sit still. Don't tell me to back up. Like, I need to get, like, don't tell me what to do, basically. If we're in this sort of thing, don't tell me what to do. We're coming into it with an equal playing field. There should be no one telling each other what to do. We should be sitting down, having a conversation, and truly getting out to like what's the conflict and why did the conflict arise in the first place? That should be like the go-to. So yeah.
Yeah. Someone put in the chat, and anyone can answer. Is yelling a red flag in conflict? For you, I know, Julia, you don't like it. Anyone else? What do y'all think, Kat or Cassie? I see Cassie, you're nodding your head. You say yes. Okay, for me, in my culture, we yell. We get passionate. Like if we get upset, our voice, I wouldn't say it gets aggressive, but the volume definitely can increase. And I won't even say my culture, I'll say my family. My family, like, but that's when you got to have some self-awareness and know when it's time to shut the conversation down and revisit, right? But hopefully your partner knows that this is something that you don't like, or this is the way you react, which it may be a form of reacting or respond. So I'm mindful because I'm very self-aware. So I try to be mindful and don't allow my voice to escalate. But tone can be a red flag as well. Yeah, the audience are really joining in. I love this. All right, how we feeling? Audience, are y'all getting something out of this conversation? Do you all want us to keep going? I agree, the level is different than the tone or what you are yelling. Yeah. Okay, we got some yeses, so we're gonna keep moving on. All right, next question. Oh, I love that. I love that. All right, let me see. So we talked about some things to avoid when disagreements are happening. What are some examples of conversations, right? Where conflict may come up, may emerge, specifically with teens and young adults. Us older adults can talk about our situations, and they may be similar, but it's so important that we create a platform at Love is Respect for you all to talk about some of your challenges. So what are some, some examples of conversations where conflict may emerge with your partner?
May I?
I want you to.
For me, there are two huge things that I've noticed. I live, like being in Provo, Utah, there's a really weird culture here where everyone lives, there's kind of this like lifestyle expectancy. but everyone lives it so differently, and there's not a very high tolerance here for an opposing or slightly even different lifestyle. And so I've noticed that for me in like my personal life, when two people who are dating, their lifestyles aren't matching up, that's a huge pot for conflict, where there's different value systems, different beliefs, and people want to govern their lives in different ways. That's something that I've noticed for me. And then the other one is just kind of privacy and kind of what needs to be discussed with a partner and what's very personal in your life. Things like other friendships with other people. I don't know, those just kind of like two big things, is what to keep private and what to share with your partner, and then also if any sort of lifestyle differences.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when you could even just throw in an example, like one partner may have grown up in a very religious, strict environment, and the other partner may not. They may be atheists, which is quite okay. Everyone has a choice. And I'm just throwing an example out there. I know for me, it was very hard when I came out, right? Especially back when I came out. It was not like it is today. And because I grew up in a very strict Baptist home, it was very challenging for me, not just challenging to communicate with my partner, but challenging to even get in touch with my own personal feelings and stand in my truth. So I get that. Julia, what do you think?
Yeah, a few examples came to my mind. Definitely one, when I was younger. I was married at 19, and went through a divorce and everything like that. And that conflict really, it's okay to leave. Again, I'll say that, like, it's okay to leave. That conflict got too intense for me. I had friends tell me that like they could see a difference in my emotions when the conflict was like really present,
Yeah.
and those conflicts couldn't be resolved through conversation because of the power dynamic in the relationship. They couldn't be solved. And later on, I learned that, and I know that now because I'm in a healthy relationship where when we sit down and we have conflict conversation, I'm heard, I'm valued, I'm listened to, and everything like that. Like, for example, my partner, like, we have very different cleaning styles, and this is where we butt heads. And this is a very adult problem to have, but we have and so like I have trauma around cleaning. I never learned how to clean. My mom wasn't really around, didn't really teach me how to clean. So he asked me to help him in the kitchen, and I just start bawling because trying to ask me to do these things. I start crying, and he's like, "What's wrong? Like, what happened?" And we sat down on the couch, and I just explained to him that like I was getting overwhelmed, and he was asking me all these things to do in the kitchen. I just couldn't keep up, and like all this stuff. We had this conflict, and it was resolved. And it was the first time a conflict had been resolved in a relationship healthily because we both sat down on equal playing field and talked it out. And I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt validated. And now we have a different way of cleaning together that works. So, yeah, that's my experience with it. Is some conflict can't be done by conversations, and you do just have to leave.
Yeah. I'm so grateful that you have a healthy relationship. That was one of the things when we did our little, I wouldn't even call it an interview, but meet and greet, and how open you were with some of your challenges and where you're at now. I think it's just so amazing, because that wasn't always our story, right? All right, Cassie.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I got so caught up in what other people were saying. I just want to make sure I'm on the right track.
No, it's quite okay. It's quite okay. So, what are some examples of conversations where conflict may come up or emerge with teens or young adults?
I think anything what I think often when people live together, that can just bring so many different types of conflicts. I want to be upfront, and since I am aromantic, I don't experience like anything related to dating. I'm mostly here because if my friends have experienced it, so I don't want to speak to anyone else's experience. But one thing I can say about my own experience that I think might relate is, I think, especially for young adults, college age and older, it can be really hard living with someone for the first time who isn't your family. And that can bring up a lot of different opportunities for healthy conflict, you can say. I know not a romantic partner, but my roommate in college, one of the ones I had a really healthy relationship with, one thing that we brought up was the heat. And it was kind of a small thing, but I don't think it was necessarily like a make it or break it kind of deal, but it was basically it was getting really cold in our apartment, but she didn't want to spend too much money on the heat, which I wanted to respect. So we kind of had this conversation about something pretty seemingly small, about how my cat maybe needed to be a little bit warmer. But I felt like through that conversation, we were able to understand each other better and understand kind of why we were coming to this conversation with different perspectives and kind of what we wanted to do going forward.
Yeah. Because relationships, thank you for that example, because relationships are about relating to each other. And if we're not having conversation, we're not really learning about each other. All right. So last and final question. Can you and I think I want to start with Julia. Can you give me an example? And I want you to talk about this, of a movie, a TV series, I don't know, streaming on Prime, Netflix, but something that you've seen that has portrayed a healthy conflict. And tell me what stood out for you. Why that? Yeah. What stood out for you?
So, Parks and Rec, and I'll say this because the character development of Leslie Knope from, in some of the seasons and how she deals with conflict is just crazy. And the way they show female friendship in that show, I really love. They have such, like, you can see Leslie, she's a steamroller. In one episode, she just steamrolls over everyone, gets in everyone's business, and like won't stop. And then she acknowledges it. She like comes to terms. She's like, oh, wait, yeah, I do. I am. Okay, maybe I should change my ways a little bit and learn from this experience. So that really like sticks out to me, and I aspire to be Leslie Knope. I love her personality. I love the show. I love how it shows female friendship. I love the healthy relationships. I think every single relationship in that show is a healthy relationship. And just the way they like portray the love in the relationships are just, I think, healthy. And I really like that. I think it's great.
That's so amazing. I just started watching this show. I'm like behind on it, right? But yeah, that's so amazing. Cassie, what movie, TV series? I don't know if I'm using the right lingo, but and I apologize, y'all. I'm getting a little under the weather, but we're gonna push through. And that shows a healthy conflict. And what stood out for you?
So honestly, I was thinking of that exact same scene. I called my friend earlier this morning and I was saying, like, I was asked this question, like, I can't think of a good example. And then I was like, wait, Parks and Rec is my favorite show. So maybe I'll talk about a slightly different element of that scene. But when Julia said that, I like laughed out loud on mute, because that was the steamroller incident was exactly what I was thinking. And I think just to highlight, Julia kind of already said this, but the idea of, it doesn't, like, maybe at first it wasn't so healthy, because I think if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I watched the show, but Leslie was maybe not kind of approaching it directly, and then she kind of took a step back after she got certain, like, nice but from feedback from her friends that she was a steamroller, she took a step back and was able to like, you know, take accountability and acknowledge that, and then talk through more about like, you know, how she could do better in the future. So yeah, I love Parks and Rec, and I thought of the exact same scene.
Wow. Okay, if Kat said the same TV show, well, I'm gonna have to get on this. But okay, Kat, same question for you.
I've actually never seen Parks and Rec, so sounds like I need to hop on that train though. But I thought of I just started rewatching the Hannah Montana series. I'm a daycare teacher, okay? And in the first episode, Montana, and it's starting to cause problems between like her and her best friend. And so she tells her best friend, and at first it doesn't go very well. And she's like, I knew I shouldn't have trusted you. Like, this was a really big mistake. But then Lily comes back and she apologizes, and they sit down and they talk about it. And then they end up being best friends again, both as Miley and Lily, and then as Hannah and Lola, and it ends up like building upon their relationship and expanding it. And so, I mean, okay, guys, I love Disney Channel. I think that especially the older shows are just so good, but I just loved the way it did that, because those characters are 14 years old, and they were able to have, right, there was this aspect of her life that she shared, it caused a problem, and then they were able to fix it. And I know it's a TV show, but respectfully, if they can do that at 14, what's stopping us? So.
Wow. So true. You know, so true. So true. So this has been an amazing conversation. I want to give you all an opportunity to end with whatever you want to end with. If it's something I didn't ask, if it's something that you want to say about healthy conflict resolution that wasn't mentioned, again, you don't have to, but I want to create a space right now if either of you want to add anything. And it's okay if you don't. Go ahead, Kat.
I have another thought. One thing that I was thinking about, just as kind of we listened to this whole conversation, especially in the terms of like, you know, we're talking about conflict within relationships. And one thing that I noticed within my own life and my own personal relationships is how prominent my own mental and physical health is. And we've talked a lot about
You're breaking out. You're breaking out. Get closer. You're breaking out.
Aware of our own level. The next level of that is if you're not okay, how is your relationship supposed to be okay? And what happens when a partner or yourself starts to struggle? Like, how is that going to be approached? And how are you going to approach it by yourself? And how do you want your partner to approach it when you start to struggle? And how do you want to approach them when they start to struggle? Because a relationship is, you know, two or more people who at the end of the day are here to support and love each other. But we're also here to support and love ourselves. Like, and if like, I actually just a few weeks ago called it off with this guy because he was great to me, but I didn't feel like I was okay enough to be a good partner to him. And by being able to recognize that, I'm able to sit back and be like, okay, what do I need to do to be a good partner? We talk a lot about our partners good for us, but are we good for our partners? And so when conflict arises, being able to recognize how much of it is a problem or is our partner, but also how much of it is ourselves. Earlier, we talked about ego and stuff like that, and being able to check yourself and take care of yourself and make sure you are in a healthy spot to be in a healthy relationship is really, really important. So here's your reminder to drink your water, eat a snack, and go to therapy.
Yeah, and dance and do TikToks and hang out with your friends and exercise if that's what you choose to do, but smile. My grandfather used to tell me, he was like, and I know he didn't get the numbers right, y'all, so just bear with me. He said it takes 52 muscles to frown and 32 to smile. So let's smile with less frowns. I just love it. Listen, audience, if anyone else wanted to go, I do not want to take away. Do y'all feel like y'all agree with Kat and y'all just, self-care is so very important.
I just wanted to add that if you are ever uncomfortable or ever like feeling that it's too much for you, feel free to leave the room or leave the relationship or do what you need to do, because your like self-care, yourself is the most important thing. So just want to leave that.
Amazing. Come
I
on,
just wanted-
Cassie.
I just wanted to add one thing, slightly different note, but I think it's super important to have these conversations, because especially when you're a young person, you might be in your first of a certain type of relationship. So maybe it's your first romantic relationship, maybe it's your first time moving in with someone romantically or otherwise. Maybe it's your first job, and it's hard to know what's normal when it's your first one and you haven't had experiences to compare it against. That's why I just want to say it's super important to have these conversations about what is healthy, especially with young people, because it can be so easy as a young person to kind of just assume that the way things are is normal, even though, you could be doing a lot better.
That's right. That's right. I'm telling you, each one of you bring joy to me. Like sometimes I just want to pick up the phone and be like, hey, what you doing? What's going on? But I really appreciate all of you all. Love is Respect appreciates you. We're not just youth driven, we're youth focused, and you all play a part with that. So audience, if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse or just have, please reach out to thehotline.org. That's THE hotline.org all together. And you'll see where you can contact us by phone, chat, or text. We're totally confidential and here 24/7. Maybe you have a question, or you know a young person who has a question about their relationship or not sure how to set boundaries. We have experienced expert advocates. Reach out to loveisrespect.org all together. You can call, text, or chat. All the information is on our website. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Gretchen. Thank you, youth council members. You rock.
Thank you all. Thank you, Angela. This was an amazing presentation, and the comments coming through are fantastic. So we did have a few people enter some questions in the Q&A box, and I just want to acknowledge those. We didn't have time to get to your questions, but we'll do our best to follow up with you afterwards. Again, we'll be sending out a follow-up email to this session that includes a link to the recordings and then also the PowerPoint. So, interpreters, thank you. Angela, youth council members, you're incredible. This was a fabulous experience. Thank you for being here. Watch out for more announcements, and we hope to see you again soon. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.